Hello, hello. Welcome to the RedwoodJS partner pitches. We're so excited to have you join us today. We have 5 fabulous companies that will be sharing their services and their products. It is going to be fantastic. And before we get started, I did just want to share that we have a RedwoodJS conference coming up in September in Grants Pass, Oregon. It is going to be wonderful. So I'd encourage you to go to redwoodjsconf.com. Check it out and please register. We would love to spend time with you in person. So it's going to be an excellent conference. So today I have with me, I'm going to start pulling all of our panelists up. I have Yoko. She is a VC at A16Z. Welcome.
Thank you, Amy. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And then we have Jayesh. He is a startup with Florian Works. Welcome, Jayesh.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure.
Awesome. And then last but certainly not least, we have Keith Elliott, and he is with the RedwoodJS core team helping out with our community. So hopefully you've seen him in Discord.
Good morning. At least it's morning where I am. Good to see everybody.
Awesome. So these are going to be our panelists. They're going to be helping us as we listen to all our pitches and just kind of provide reactions and ask any questions. If you are in the chat, please feel free to ask questions. If we get a chance, we would love to ask our partners whatever questions you might have. So first up, we have Jaril from Replay. Jaril, welcome.
Hi.
And without further ado, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, I think I need to share my screen first, right? Do this. Okay, I think that's on. Hi, everybody. My name is Jaril. I work at a company called Replay, which I'm very excited to tell you all about today. I first of all wanted to thank the Redwood team, Amy, specifically for organizing this. I think this is the second one. I said I think. It's really more like I know because I stalked the first one just to know what kind of stuff I should be talking about here. And is that usually it's startups with their founders or CEOs who come on to talk about their companies. And I wanted to point out that I am neither. I am one of the founding engineers. And because of that, and because it's Thursday, and it's because it's just barely 9 a.m., I thought I'd have a little bit more fun with this. Instead of talking to you about Replay, which I will do shortly, I'm going to rant to you about my CEO, who's not currently here. Specifically about this. Help, my CEO keeps reporting bugs that don't exist. And that's the shortened version. The real version is, help, our CEO is getting mad at me because he said that our login flow is broken, but I swear it's not. I've checked it a bajillion times and it works. I've even tried it on a Palm Pilot, and do you know how hard it is to find one of those things? And one more thing. See, I'm getting riled up. Let's take a step back. I don't think our CEO, Jason, is actually out to get me, because when he files these bugs, I see the screenshot. I know things are going wrong. He has a video, but I can't make it happen on my machine. And it's not an isolated incident, because we have the exact same problem when it comes to customer issues. Can't see it on my machine. Same thing when I'm trying to push a feature last minute, and all of a sudden CI goes from green to red, and I pull it locally, try to reproduce the failures, and it just doesn't work. And here, I don't think I actually have a CEO problem. I have a reproduction problem. And if you've worked for any length in any development team, this is probably going to sound super familiar. Before we did any of this engineering, it's possible that we were naive and thought that bug reproduction was easy. I surely thought so. Like if somebody ran into a bug, there were a bunch of steps that they did to get there. So if I just copy the same thing, I'm going to run into that bug. But one, getting clear steps to repro is very difficult in the first place. Even if you did, You need to have the same environment, the same time and date, same API endpoints, same internet service, same lunar phase, same I can't even pronounce this, meteorological conditions. And it's bananas. It's really hard to get everything to line up. So much so that it becomes a massive time sink, and everybody knows how that feels. If every single variable has to be the exact same, wouldn't it be easier to just, travel back in time? Not that time travel is trivial, but it almost seems easier. And that's what our team has been up to. Replay is a browser recorder that creates shareable recordings for you to inspect with time travel debugging. And I'm going to dissect that in a second. The important thing to get across here is that if our CEO just recorded and reproduced his bugs with replay, I, as an engineer, get a perfect inspectable reproduction of the bug. Because I don't have to reproduce it a second time, this thing gets resolved faster, which makes my CEO happy. And as an engineer, it's really fun for me because I have a near instant debugging feedback loop. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. Because a replay is a link. And when you open that link, you have everything you need to debug without changing tabs. You have a playable video. You have your console logs. You have your network requests. You have your elements. You have things like React DevTools, Redux DevTools. And the magic trick is that you can place console logs in your code, and it will regenerate in the console as if they were there in the first place. And 1 second. I'm clicking on next right now, and it's not working. 1 second. Is this a contrived example of a bug so that I can stop talking and actually demo our app? Well, yes. In fact, this is not actually Keynote. This is just a web app running in the replay browser. If this doesn't look special because it's not supposed to, it's a browser with one exception. It has this record button. And what I can do is use it like a screen recorder. I know there's a bug there. I'm going to hit record. I'm going to reproduce this bug just once. I think I go all the way up to 26. 26. Then I'm gonna hit next, and I don't think it's going to work. Okay, there we go. I've captured it. I'm going to hit stop. And we're going to upload this so that we have a link we can share with people. It's called Partner Pitches. Only I can view this. Let's fix that. And I'm going to hit save. Now, this goes pretty quickly usually. Thank you. And at first glance, this just looks like a screen recording. This is, again, a link that you can open in any browser. It doesn't have to be in the replay browser. I can play the video. I can note things in comments in case it's helpful for the next person. Like, I had a comment like here, slide 11. But where this starts truly shining is, even if I can see the bug, and that's going to happen around here, at some point I'm going to have to open my code editor and start looking at what's happening in the code. With replay, you don't have to. As you can see, we have events here. We've got clicks. I know that the last click is the one where I clicked it. It doesn't move. The one before that was going to 26. And we have this blue button that is particular to replay. It's the jump to code button. And this opens DevTools like you've never seen before. Now, this gets quite overwhelming, so I'm going to close some tabs just to point out the real estate tour. You have your console here, so you'll see your logs. You can inspect elements. You can inspect React. You can inspect your network events. You have all of your source code here. I'm going to open just a simple component file, this clicker component that's in charge of moving the slides along. And you have your source code, but I'd like to direct your attention to this left sidebar here. It says 26 because this line was hit 26 times. So replay has a lot more information than anything that was previously available before. Another thing we can do here is press plus, and this adds a retroactive print statement. You can see it just like threw a bunch of things in the console. Right now it's trying to print clicker 13. I'm going to try printing count. I can see it goes from like 1 to 26. It's all there. Great. Now, clearly I'm trying to get to 27. It's stopping there. Let's take a look at the very last hit there. Right now I'm paused on that hit so I can hover on any variable, inspect it immediately without having to reload my app. Let's go back to that click event and do that magical jump to code thing. And now I'm in this page file. And immediately I'm seeing things that worry me. Well, it's called sabotage set count, for example. That sounds contrived, which is the vibe we're going for this morning. There's a set count and there's a wrapper around it. That sounds like it could be a problem. Now, because this is a full feature debugger, if you're used to browser DevTools, you can step into that function. It's also right there, so I can just take a look. And it looks like new count equals slide to sabotage evil after CEO. Okay, our CEO is out to get me. So slide to sabotage was 27. And so when that happens, it bails if you're not holding the control key. Okay, I think I've solved it. And this is the equivalent of solving a bug. I'd like to point out that at this point, I never had to download the application. I never had to run it. No steps are reproduced. I just had to click around and replay, not even changing a tab, which means I can go back to my slides now, hit next quickly, get back to 26. I'm clicking on next, it's not working. I'm gonna hold that command, click next, and for the moment of truth, it's working. And in case I haven't emphasized this enough, it's a shareable link. So anybody can do this as long as you've recorded it, which goes back to our point of only reproducing it once. Now, this is pretty much a magic trick, but it's a magic trick that's happening out in the wild. We have teams currently using it, loving it, to the point that they prioritize issues that have replays on it. Can you attach a replay as a meme at this point? Because I only have 8 minutes, I really only talked about bug reporting with replay, but because of what it can do, it's useful for other things. Another thing is CI test debugging. As soon as you know that the test is failing, if you have your replay integration with your test runners, we have the link to the replay of the thing that failed, and you have the exact same debugging experience as we just showed. The other thing is when you're getting onboarded onto a new code base, instead of just reading the code, get a replay and then start putting console logs around so you understand how the system works. And there's more to that. And again, I'm just scratching the surface because I think my 8 minutes is up, which leaves me with this. You can start debugging with replay in minutes. Go to replay.io, download the browser, and start recording your app. If you have any questions, we've got the comments. I'm also on Twitter. Thanks for listening, and that's it.
That was amazing. Let me pull up our panelists. Yoko, do you have a response or a question?
Yeah, so interestingly, recently I've been working on a lot of open source projects on the side. And when reviewing PRs, I come across this exact problem all the time. And then replay is definitely the first stop I go to kind of test out what is the bug and then share it on the PR, things like that. When I was an engineer, I kind of worked on a lot of CI bugs that were flaky. And the replay is a game changer there. So super excited to kind of see the demo again today.
Yeah, if you ever want to see a developer like crumple into pieces, just tell them about flaky tests. And immediately there's a visceral reaction there. And this is specifically surgically designed for that.
That's awesome. Keith?
Yeah, Jaril, super cool. So what comes to mind is production versus, say, development. Is this able to be run in production also?
Yes. So the replay browser is just a browser. You can record anything. The problem is what you end up recording differs between production and development.
Okay.
One big thing, for example, is source maps. If you record production apps, then everything's minified. You can't really make sense of things.
Sure.
Unless you're feeling sadistic that morning, I would suggest that you upload your source map separately, which we have documentation for. So that's not a problem.
Right on. Cool.
Awesome. Jayesh?
Yeah, Jaril, flaky tests, you said it. I mean, this is going to go a long way in keeping engineers sane. So I'm excited to go back and try it.
Yeah. Let us
Awesome.
know if you have any feedback.
Thank you so much, Jaril. This is wonderful. Just a huge asset for developers. And we really do appreciate you being part of the RedwoodJS community.
Certainly.
Awesome. Next up, we have Varun from Chromatic. Bringing him up. Awesome. Varun, welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, sure. Without further ado, I will add your screen and get out of the way.
Perfect. Thank you. Hey, everyone. My name is Varun. I'm part of the developer experience team at Chromatic, and that's what I'm going to be talking to you about today. It's Chromatic. It is a tool for reviewing and testing UIs. And in particular, what's sort of unique about Chromatic is that it focuses on component-based tests. And then also, these tests are actually powered by Storybook stories. And that's kind of a really unique workflow that Chromatic has. In fact, Chromatic is built by the maintainers of Storybook. So the two tools kind of work really, really seamlessly. And I should probably take a step back and actually start by talking about Storybook a little bit, and then dive into sort of how that fits into the larger picture with Chromatic. So when you're working on an application, you're building out that app using multiple components, and those components tend to usually have multiple states. So here I have an example of a restaurant card from a food delivery application. The card looks different depending on the application state. So there's a default mode, when a restaurant is newly added to the system, for example, or if it's closed for the day, or when the page is loading, the card kind of looks slightly different and behaves slightly different in each case. And then you might have variations that come from different color modes that you support, localization, or viewport sizes. So these are all the different variations of that one particular component that you're building out. The thing is, when you're working on this component in your application, you have to be able to replicate all of those different scenarios and view the component in all those different states. And there is a bit of a sort of friction that gets introduced when you try to do that in an application. And that's because the component is connected to actual application state, backend data that might be being fetched from your services and so on. So if you want to trigger a particular state for that component, quite often you have to actually jump into the code and add manual overrides to the code temporarily to trigger a particular state. For example, if I want to see the closed state of that component, I'll go in and manually add the is closed prop to my component. Similarly, if I want to trigger the loading state, I might add a is loading state to the component. And this is a pretty common scenario. This is a relatively straightforward component where I can simply override props to trigger different states. For more complex components, you have to rely on browser dev tools or the network tab to trigger loading states and network failure states. And it gets kind of tedious. And also, it's wasteful work. So you do that once when you're working on that component, then you come back to it 6 months later, or another teammate comes back to work on that component or to fix a bug, and they have to repeat that work all over again. So all that work you did to sort of simulate the different variations of the component, that gets lost. And Storybook was built precisely to tackle that workflow, to simplify that workflow, and to take away some of that sort of tedious work that you have to do repeatedly. And the way Storybook works is it detaches the component from the application and gives you a sandbox where you can run that component in isolation. And once you've isolated that component, you can actually simulate all the different variations relatively straightforward. And Storybook gives you all the mechanisms that are required to simulate all the variations of a component. And the way that works is using something called a story. A story is essentially all the inputs that are required to render a particular state for a component. For example, this is the default state for that restaurant card component that I showed, and args are all of the props that go into that component that render that particular state. So you follow this process to write out stories for all of the other states of that component, and you save all of these stories in a stories file that sits alongside your component code and gets tracked and version controlled just like any other test would be. And then the idea is during development, Storybook is running all of these different stories for you. So when you're working on a component, you can quickly cycle through all the different variations to see what they look like and verify that they look and behave the way you want them to. And then for stories, it's not just about sort of args or props that are going into the component. You can simulate different themes, different locales, any other sort of global context that impacts how the UI is rendered. You can even mock API requests that the component might be triggering within the component to ensure that any data, any kind of information that's required to render a particular state gets captured in the story itself. So effectively, with stories, you have all of the test cases for what a component does. And that's really cool. Effectively, each story is one scenario or one test case for a component. And because we have all the test cases, we just need a test runner. And that's what Chromatic is. Chromatic takes all of those stories and converts them into UI tests that are executed in a cloud in our cloud-based browser infrastructure. It runs a few different types of tests. The first one is visual regression testing. The idea here is you want to catch any kind of accidental changes to the UI, things that are unintentional, a bit of leaky CSS or You try to change the layout on one component, but it breaks up a different layout on a different page. So visual regression tests are fantastic for capturing that. And the way Chromatic works is once you have your stories, it uploads all of your stories into the cloud infrastructure, runs them all in parallel, and then captures a snapshot of each story. And if it happens to find any visual differences between the previous version of the snapshot and the newly captured snapshot, it alerts you to those changes. So you can go in and see whether that's an accidental change or an intentional change. If it's an accidental change, that's a good trigger for you to go back to your code and see if you need to go fix something. And if it's an intentional change, you can approve that and update the baseline. So that'll be the new state of that particular story and that particular component. So visual testing is one aspect of testing. The other aspect is testing how the component actually behaves, the underlying logic, the user interactions. Classically, when you test something like this, you either go with really sort of heavy end-to-end tests, which tend to be flaky, or the more popular approach these days is to use integration tests that run at the component level, using tools like Jest and testing library. So that's exactly the workflow that Storybook gives you. But the cool thing is it builds on that idea of stories, and it runs those tests in the browser itself. So the way this works is you can attach something called a play function to your story. And this play function is a snippet of code that gets executed once the story has rendered. So within this play function, you can actually write out user interactions and even run assertions. And the cool thing is, instead of reinventing the wheel, we're taking sort of the best of the ecosystem. So you're using Jest and testing library, the same familiar, really nice developer API, API that you're familiar with, except you get to write that right inside the story file itself. So the story becomes the starting point, and then the play function has the interactions and assertions on top of it. And then the cool thing is, during development, when you're running Storybook locally, those tests are running in the browser, so you can debug them relatively straightforwardly. And then once you're ready to open up a pull request, you trigger a Chromatic build, and Chromatic will actually run both the visual test, but then it also waits for the interactions to complete and ensures that all the assertions are passing, and then captures the snapshot. So you're able to combine both visual and interaction testing into one test. So it works really great for catching any accidental changes to the UI, but also you get to verify that the underlying logic is working as you would expect it to. So really what it boils down to is you build components in Storybook, and during the development process, you write stories, and effectively, as you're writing stories, it simplifies your development workflow, but also you're capturing all the different test cases for the UI. And then Chromatic uses those stories to power tests. So you're able to test both how the UI looks and functions simultaneously. And then Redwood actually has really fantastic built-in support for Storybook. So if you all are interested, you can get going really quickly. I encourage you to give it a try. You can learn more at chromatic.com. Thank you.
This is so great. As a front-end developer and someone that focuses a lot on design, I have so much appreciation for Storybook and Chromatic. I think probably my favorite use case is I've been on projects where I'm having to build a front end for a back-end developer, and I've had to create a fake page for them because Storybook wasn't on the project, and then write in documentation, once this has been implemented, please delete this fake page. So
Totally.
awesome. Let me bring up our panelists. Keith, let's hear from you.
I have become a Storybook believer. I'm a fan. One, the Redwood tutorial has a Storybook chunk. That was my first introduction. And then two, I'm working through the Learn with Redwood course that Amy has produced. And Amy, you set a good example of using Storybook to define an efficient flow. And so I'm there. It took a leap to get over this, oh, wow, another tool I got to get my hands around. But I'm there and I'm digging it. And so now I'm thinking, all right, when do I make the leap to Chromatic? Not just Storybook, but Storybook with Chromatic.
That was as good a time as any.
Right.
Keith, I've been impressed with how easy it is to integrate. There's just a single command, and basically that will publish your entire Storybook library to Chromatic. And visual integration tests are automatically built into that. I did not know about interaction tests, so that's awesome. I'm excited to check that piece out.
Cool.
Jayesh, what about you?
Yeah, Varun, a great presentation. I had a quick question. So Chromatic is acting as a test runner. I'm guessing somewhere you are loading this into a browser, maybe headless or in your cloud and running it. Do you support running it across multiple browser versions, or for companies that may have to handle bigger builds or wider compatibility or stuff like that? How do you?
Yeah, totally. So we do support multiple browsers, so you can run your tests in parallel across Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and Edge. And you can even control sort of if you want to run your test across multiple viewports. So test for responsive sizing, that's built into it too. So yeah, definitely both are covered.
And it's all configurable, and it's all configuration driven.
Yeah, so
or
we
code
don't.
driven, like just.
It is code driven, so we don't allow you to specify a particular browser version. We tend to keep up to date with whatever is latest. So you get to test in the latest versions of the browsers.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Yoko?
Yeah, I think Varun Chromatic kind of made it seem so easy to test these out. And I think most of us here have tried testing at-scale UI components without any tooling, and it was a mess. So this is super cool. I thought it's worth mentioning that for anyone who kind of work in a bigger team who actually have a design system, like you have a different team designing, oh, here's a hierarchy, here's how you use it. Storybook and Chromatic is super useful.
Yep, 100%. Awesome. Well, thank you, Vern, for participating in our partner pitches, and really just appreciate you being part of the Redwood community, and not just a part of it, like a huge part of it. The fact that you can just, as you mentioned, run a single command and be up and running with Storybook is fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. Of course. So next up, I'm super excited about this one. So I think for anybody that has had to build a product, it doesn't take much, or you don't get far in development before you realize that you need authentication. So for our next partner that we have pitching, we have Colin, who is the co-founder of Clerk. Colin, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
All right, I guess I'll jump in here. All right. So yeah, for those who don't know, Clerk, we like to call ourselves more than authentication, complete user management. And I'm going to jump into a little bit about what that means. First, a little about me. Co-founder of Clerk, high level is like we build auth for React, and we currently manage millions and millions of MAUs. I stole this from Jaril earlier in the session. I'm here to solve a CEO problem. I actually edited on the fly here, but help, our CEO is getting mad because he said that our login flow is broken, but I swear I've checked it a billion times. Gonna solve it a little less, or a little differently than Jaril. Just use Clerk for authentication and this will go away. But more seriously, the way we approach auth and user management at Clerk, first, we want to unblock authentication ridiculously quickly. Second, we want the UIs we provide to just be UIs that you love, that you're proud of. And same with the user profile, right? We don't just stop at authentication. It is this complete user management. We really like to think beyond traditional security. And then we also want to help you with customer support. And I think this is kind of, again, complete user management. And we'll get into what all of this means. First of all, unblock authentication ridiculously quickly. So with Redwood, so this is just the Clerk Redwood docs. You go to quick starts, you pick Redwood. A few commands, like we should be running within 10 minutes. I think our median is about 13 minutes right now. So it really is just ridiculously fast. We're constantly looking for ways to make it faster, as you can tell by like us measuring it. But yeah, we really do strive to just make this incredibly easy. Like, we don't think authentication is something developers should need to, like, stress about. I think there are best practices today, and we can kind of just provide those best practices out of the box, kind of match your users' expectations and get you going. All right, number 2. Authentication UI you love. And so I'm just going to do a little bit of demoing of our components. So in React, like, you can just drop this in as, like, open bracket sign in. And yeah, I guess to show a couple variants of the experience, I'll show just like logging in to my Gmail. Yeah, so Clerk, I'm logging into clerk.com. We use Clerk ourselves. But I don't have this one saved in 1Password, so you can see, just, type it in. I'll sign out. I'll do one of these like forgot password flows. I'll just say, why don't you send me a code? I'll grab that. Getting codes while you're in like do not disturb mode is annoyingly hard. 272.228. And so that works. But then, like, we've also kind of put a lot of focus on well, actually, no, I meant to show this first. So the other thing is, like, you can go in with Gmail as well, which, like, this is all the same account that I'm logging into. So that account linking automatically works. Let's see. Then I wanted to show like the 1Password experience a little bit. And so I have my Colin at clerk.dev account saved in 1Password. And a lot of people complain with like 1Password about these like multi-step experiences. And so when I click that, it's kind of cool that like the password just pops up right away. And then it actually just like flows right through the 2FA step as well. So we're pulling all of that. It's like a tight integration with 1Password and other password editors or password managers to just work. And I guess one last one I could show. All right, let's do same Colin at clerk.dev. Now I have 2FA separately. So it's like the OAuth is only providing one factor. I still need the second factor. I can autofill this. And now we're through. Yeah, so hopefully, like, I don't know, hopefully you like don't want to build all that. Right? Like there's a ton of work that goes into everything you just saw, like verification codes and account linking and working with 1Password. It's like there's just a lot. And we just think it's probably not worthwhile to really be spinning your wheels on it. And so our goal is just like, let's try to get this into your app within 5 minutes, and then you can start building. So that's the authentication UI you love. And then there's still like the user profile UI. So I'm signed in here. This little component in the upper right, I'm not sure if you can see it like shimmer as I hover over, but that's a nice little touch. This is a component, we call it the user button, and it's kind of the waypoint for signing out as well as managing your account. And so people can come in here. This user avatar is like, we have something in our dashboard for you to like set your user avatar colors. So people end up with a nice one by default, but if they want, they can also upload. Also, if you sign up originally with Google OAuth or something, it'll pull in that profile picture. Adding emails, removing emails, setting your password, setting up 2FA, active devices I'm going to get into more a little later, deleting your account. Like all of these things are things you'll need to build one day. I think so many developers will approach auth as like, let me just get something that like gets me over the hurdle of launch. And then they'll just have these like looming list of features that they still need to build. With Clerk, you literally just drop the user button that has a link to the user profile. It opens as a modal, and it's all just here. And it works cooperatively with the sign-in component. So if someone does add 2FA, it's not like there's extra work you need to do to hook it up. You don't need to check, does the user have 2FA? Like all of that's all built in. Cool. So that's user profile UI love. Beyond traditional security. So this is more just like talking points. Traditional security, I think, is like really table stakes. So, hopefully like every auth package you use, you like hash passwords in the database. They're using HTTP only cookies. That's for like XSS mitigation. Like 2FA should be available. There should be this recognition that like SMS auth is insecure. Like maybe you want to offer it, but at the very least, like the user should be able to opt into TOTP auth instead. And so that to me is like, hey, these have been best practices for 5 years, decades even. And so you should definitely have these. And I think like most auth packages do a good amount of work to handle these issues. I think one thing that's been more surprising though is like how many security issues kind of lie beneath the surface, and we've been seeing this, I guess, both as we scale, but more importantly as our customers scale. And so we've needed to build out this like strong brute force detection, right? Like the same IP shouldn't be trying hundreds of passwords. Like that's not a user who's forgotten their password. That's a user trying to break in, and so we have that built in. Fake account detection. A lot of AI apps right now are dealing with this issue of bots trying to spin up thousands and thousands of accounts to steal kind of the free AI compute that they offer, and so we need to protect against that. SMS pumping detection. Again, it's like if you have a sign up that does SMS verification in the middle of it, there's like certain countries where it's kind of fraud, SMS pumping fraud, where a attacker can like get kickbacks from a telecom company for just getting an SMS sent to them. And so if your sign up form can trigger an SMS to them, they'll try to just generate thousands of accounts. They won't actually complete the sign up. They're just trying to receive the SMS for their kickback. And that's a big headache that we've had to deal with. Last is active device management, right? So I mentioned this briefly, like, I guess I'm only signed in on one device right now, but if I signed in on another device, it would be listed here, and it would also say, sign out. And that's something I think you see in a lot of like mature products, right? Like Google has this if you go to your Google account, but it's something that a lot of less mature products don't have yet. And I think one of the nice advantages of kind of only caring about auth as a company is like we get to really just dive deep in what we provide. All right. Help with support. So this is a fun one. I think it falls into a complete user management just because our customers have asked for it. But let me. Oh no, I lost my tab. Which one is it? This one. Okay, so I'm signed in right now as like an administrator of Clerk.com. This is an incognito window, so it's a separate set of cookies. So over here, I'm signed in. I guess I'm signed in as Colin at Clerk.dev here. Here, I'm going to sign in as my Gmail again. But like, let's say, I'm this user, I'm having a problem. I contact into support. I'm describing the problem. And then support like wants to help out, but it would be really helpful if support could kind of see what I'm seeing. And so we have this like administrative function. And so now I'm signed in as an administrator of Clerk.com, where you can go, and I pulled up my Gmail account, and I can actually go and impersonate myself in this case. And what happens is like I'm now signed in as my Gmail, but I'm actually an administrator. And so this thing is here. It's just like more or less reminding me like, hey, by the way, you're signed in as someone else. And now I can see everything that this user does. It's just proven to be like really helpful for our customers. It's a fun one for us because I think, people think of us as an auth company, and this is the way it's tied in is like session management. Like ultimately, we're generating a impersonation session for the administrator, and in the developer's backend, you can detect, hey, is this an impersonator? And so I think we have this set up at Clerk, so if someone's impersonating, they can read, but they can't make any adjustments. And we give developers ways to set that up so that their support team can see things, but not actually manipulate anything, or they can generate audit logs and so on. So anyway, this is a fun other way that we kind of think of more than authentication, complete user management. That's all I got. Again, like you can get all of that ridiculously easily, right? Just drop in a couple components, follow that Redwood guide in clerk.com/docs. This is my contact information, Colin at clerk.com, teach by Colin. And then on Twitter, we're ClerkDev. But that's all I've got. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Colin. I can't believe we're talking about exchanging 13 minutes worth of work for like literally months of work to be able to have the same functionality.
I think React is just absolutely wild in how much you can, because we're doing both front end and back end, the amount we can deliver so easily it's so cool. It's totally like components are the new APIs. Like this is a whole new world.
Awesome. Jayesh, love to hear from you.
Sure. Yeah, Colin, thank you for your presentation. I think it was great. I mean, you're making security easy and achievable for millions of users and thousands of companies. I think 8 minutes are not enough for what you do. I think there's a lot more. Maybe you can spend maybe 30, 45 seconds, because I see you also have like a B2B SaaS component, and multi-tenancy is also something you support. So if you could just shed some light on that, that would be great.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a set of B2B SaaS components that's basically, if you're building a B2B SaaS, after someone signs up, they need to also sign up their organization and like invite their team members, set people's roles and permissions. We're, I'd say, still in the early innings of those components, but it works very similarly. Like you drop a create organization component, and that gives them the UI to kick this off. And then they can set up multiple organizations and switch between them. And yeah, that's actually the team I'm managing right now. And so a very near and dear problem to me. I think Clerk is also using those components ourselves, and over the coming months, there's a tremendous amount of focus there to basically streamline building an entire B2B SaaS, and we're thinking about like how can we pull billing plans into there, and just a lot more. And so we're excited about those.
Very cool. Yeah, self-service multi-tenancy is going to be amazing. So looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yoko?
Yeah, this is extremely cool. So all of us have tried Clerk hands-on, and then we actually picked Clerk as the auth provider for all of the open source stacks that we have been shipping, from getting started stack for AI to like companion stack. What we realized, there's one thing that Colin didn't mention that's like a great benefit for us, was really the bot detection piece, where when we launch these apps, there's so many people just pinging like the endpoints wanting to sign up, and then we definitely see Clerk kind of keep these fake accounts out. Another really cool thing was for other auth providers I have tried, I have to implement like authenticate like phone number based on the user myself, but like for Clerk it was just so easy. So if you're kind of like doing any text-based features, like texting a user, getting a text from a user, it just worked into your Clerk. So everyone should try it out.
That's great. Keith?
Colin, I find this so refreshing. The first Redwood open source contribution that I made was a documentation for auth, and I invested a month of my life. This is my hobby, not my job. And so I know the pain. And I want to help folks address it. I've been hacking away developing, say, the user experience. I don't want to do it anymore. And so you really jive with the spirit of Redwood. which is to help startups explore more territory faster. And so it's you're addressing real pain. I know the pain, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Yeah, we just got to get out of the way and let them build, right? That's the mindset.
Love it. Well, thank you again so much, Colin, for pitching today and being part of the Redwood community. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Next up, we have GitPod, and I'm very excited about this one. I actually have been working on a GitPod Redwood integration, and you guys have been fantastic to help. And I've started just to get a glimpse of everything that GitPod can do. So I'm very excited to see your presentation. Thanks, Sean, for joining us.
Thank you, Amy. It's good to be here. Before I start, how's my sound coming through?
Sounds great.
Okay, great. Got a new microphone. Want to make sure it sounds okay.
Silky smooth.
Cool. Let's share my window. And off we go. Is the share? Yeah, it looks like it's working. Excellent.
Looks great.
So hello, live listeners and people of the future. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sean Carolyn, and I'm a sales engineer at GitPod, the leading provider of cloud development environments, or CDEs. Today, I'm going to talk about how GitPod can help you and your team be more productive by providing a consistent, reproducible, and shareable development environment for your projects. We're happy to be partners of RedwoodJS because we share a similar goal of helping remove friction from the software developers world. So here's the problem that GitPod aims to solve. A recent study has shown that most developers waste at least 2 hours a week just fighting with their local dev environments instead of writing code. Now, this is hugely inefficient. If you think about how much your developers are paid, and then the fact that most of them are spending 100 hours a year wrestling with dependency issues, mismatched software libraries, and a plethora of other issues that are common to your local dev environments. Well, you can do the math yourself for your own world. So enter GitPod. What is GitPod? GitPod is essentially your powerful developer laptop in the cloud. Think about how much time and trouble it takes to install a new dev laptop. You have to install your IDEs, your runtime environments, your libraries and plugins, all your credentials and personal settings. Sometimes this process can take days or even weeks before your developers even get on the starting block and start contributing code. And all this busy work that gets in the way of your devs, who really just want to sit down and write some code and test it. So our motto is always ready to code. GitPod was designed by developers for developers, and we do eat our own dog food. So we actually use GitPod to develop GitPod. We believe that browser-based development environments that run in the cloud are the future. And the good news is the future is here today. You can use GitPod for free. We've got a generous free tier that allows up to 50 hours a month of workspace runtime. So even a bootstrap startup with little or no budget can actually use GitPod and get started easily. GitPod can run on our SaaS platform. It's called GitPod Cloud. And for larger teams, we also have a dedicated offering that runs in your cloud account. GitPod is highly customizable, and it includes a powerful runtime environment where you can easily spin up copies of your app for testing and validation. Finally, GitPod is secure and compliant because it gets your source code and secrets off those developer laptops and onto much more secure, ephemeral environments that are easier to audit and lock down. So next, I'd like to show you a demo of GitPod running RedwoodJS. And if you'd like to follow along at home, you can even use the same tutorial that I'm about to use for the demo here. So RedwoodJS is all about helping startups not have to fight their framework and get productive, developing and delivering apps. It kind of ties together all these common tools, so you don't have to go stitch them together yourself. And at GitPod, we have a similar mission. We want to just provide you an always ready dev environment that you can spin up in seconds. So this is the demo. I'll go ahead and try and drop a copy of this into the chat. See if that works. If you'd like to follow along at home, all you need is a free GitPod account. And the whole tutorial is contained within this repo. There's a handy Open in GitPod button here. So if we simply click this button, we come to the GitPod dashboard where we can create a new workspace. As you can see, there are some settings you can change. We've got a bunch of different options for IDEs. Today, we're just going to go with the default, which is Visual Studio Code running in your browser. So the workspace is provisioning. And the first time you do this, it'll take a little longer because it's got to go ahead and install all of the dependencies and plugins for Visual Studio Code. So you'll start to see that spinning up here in the background. The extensions are activating. There's a yarn command that's running to build out the environment. I've already got one of these pre-provisioned, so we don't have to watch it stand up. But this really doesn't take that long, just a few minutes. And then what's nice is you can pause the workspace. You can come back to it later, and everything will be right where you left it. So it's really convenient and fun to work with. This is a list of all the other workspaces that I have running or have paused. And I just want to point this out to show you that each one of these is like having a separate developer laptop, right? So each one's a full-fledged independent environment. If I were to try to do this in a local dev environment, I would need 10 or 11 laptops to achieve the same result. So here is the pre-provisioned workspace. It's got the tutorial preloaded up here in the top. So we'll just go ahead and jump in and see how easy it is to get started with Redwood. I could see that the app or the basic Redwood, homepage, welcome page is up and running. And what we want to do is go ahead and create, basic framework, right, for a simple CRUD app. So we just want to be able to create, delete, read, all the basic stuff that you want to do. You can always get help here with the help command. But the first thing we want to do is take care of the database. So we're going to use Prisma to kind of migrate and configure this database here. So we'll copy this, and then we're going to go into the API DB, open our schema, and I need to copy this first. And then we're going to replace the model. Oops, looks like I missed a line. So we'll try again. Oh, I see what's happening. It didn't grab the first. Yeah, it looks healthy. Okay, excellent. And then we're going to just run this command here. Oh, looks like I had a little clipboard malfunction. We'll just try again with typing. And then we want to just call this create posts. Nice. So RW, if you're curious, is short for Redwood, saves you a few keystrokes as you run these commands. And now we can go ahead and run this scaffold command to get everything we need for our little CRUD create, retrieve, update, delete app. Let's see if my paste is behaving. No, it's still grabbing the wrong thing. So we'll just go ahead and I think if I use the keyboard shortcut, it's better. There we go. So it's roping together all the dependencies, setting up the scaffolding, everything we need to have a basic functional app, right? So if you think about, a new startup, how hard is it to go and configure all these tools separately, right? It's a real challenge to just even get your dev environment going. And you can see how just in a matter of a couple minutes, we've got basically a little guest book app, right? Okay. Hey, neat. Our app is working. So let's continue with the tutorial. Some other things you can do. We talked a little bit about Storybook earlier, and Storybook is definitely included. So we can run yarn rw Storybook. And Storybook's great because it lets you kind of just jump right in and start working on design before you even know how the data models are going to look in their final condition, right? So that no longer is a blocker. Your front-end devs can start to think about the look and feel of the app before you've got all of the details worked out on the back end. So there's Storybook. Confess, I haven't used Storybook much, but it seems to be working. So we'll open a new terminal and continue our journey. Testing. It's essential. It's really important. And almost nobody does it. Why? Because it's a pain, right? It's hard. Redwood makes this really easy, including Jest. So out of the box, you get some useful testing for your app. You could just run yarn rw test. And a basic test suite will fire up and let you see how they pass. Hey, it looks pretty good. We're passing everything, so that looks healthy. And then finally, I won't be able to run this step because I don't have a target environment yet, but you can ship your app too. So here are some of the options you can use. We'll just show the different targets you can use for deploying your app. So built-in support for a bunch of different options. All those are there. And then you also have several options for auth providers. So this is just a real quick little taste of what it feels like to develop using RedwoodJS and GitPod. And if you'd like to try it yourself, you can head over to our Getting Started page. This will help you get up and running quickly with GitPod. And then you've got the Redwood link there in the chat as well. And so that's the end of the demo and presentation. Pretty quick and easy. GitPod wants to be the tool that just gets out of your way and lets you write code.
Thank you so much, Sean. Really do appreciate you and taking the time to pitch. I think one thing that has been really interesting to me that you did not mention is that GitPod will also integrate with your PRs. So if you're having to review somebody's code, you can pull up their implementation directly within GitPod. You don't have to do a Git clone and get everything up and running on your machine and fight with all that. You can use it as part of your development process.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't touch on that. For the less or non-technical folks in the audience, a PR is a pull request. So if your developer makes some changes on their own machine, they need to have someone else take a look at those changes and test those changes and eventually merge those changes back into your brand, to the master copy of your code so it can go to production. And this process is often really painful. It's really slow and hard, and it's hard to set up an environment that looks like someone else's environment. Sometimes we call this, it runs on my machine problem, right? Like if Amy has got her environment all customized and set up and she says, hey, I've got this pull request. Now I've got to take a bunch of time out of my day to go and reproduce whatever Amy built. And GitPod makes that much, much easier because now you simply have a button. I can look at what Amy did, the changes she makes, and then click the Open in GitPod button. And just like you saw me reproduce that environment, we can do the same thing and bring ourselves right to the point at which Amy committed the code, right? So we could see exactly what Amy was seeing in her pull request.
Yep, that's right. Yoko, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think just when I was watching the demo, it's just one idea that popped in my head. So when we do kind of development, we always have to share like a demo version of the app to someone else. And then this kind of solves that problem too, where it's basically being able to share your local host that's always up to someone else instead of deploy to staging or another environment. So super cool demo.
Yeah, it's a super common problem for developers. We write our code, and then where do we run it? Localhost, right? Which means your own machine. And now how do I share that app so other people can see it? So what we've done is taken that whole environment, put it in the cloud so that you can preview the app yourself like we just did. Or you didn't show this in the demo, but you can click a little switch that will turn it on and share the dev version of the app with anyone else who needs to see it. So it kind of neatly solves for that problem of like, well, how do I check someone else's work, right? And see what it looks like in a browser.
Keith?
Sean, this is neat. I have two things. One, thank you for stepping through the tutorial, because I think the reluctance for a hack like me is, well, will I really be able to do all these things that I need to do? That is the very steps that you walk through in the tutorial. So thanks for doing that. You've convinced me. Number two, yesterday in Maker Hour, so Redwood Maker Hour is a weekly venue, 1 o'clock Pacific, where we gather and talk shop. And we make rounds around the virtual table, kind of like this. And in my session, I fired up GitPod, and we cloned a repo and used it. It was really neat. It worked. It was the AI.jsx repo. This AI.jsx crew will be at the Redwood conference hosting a workshop. So I'm digging in advance. So my commitment as I get familiar with that tool is I'll use GitPod to dig into it.
Thank you, Keith. Yeah, we really feel like the time is right for browser-based software. If you look even in other industries, Canva, came on the scene because Photoshop is hard, right? Just want to build a poster or something, and Canva, using browser-based technology, put graphic design in the hands of millions of people. So we kind of want to be the same thing for the world of developers. In the past, I know folks sometimes are hesitant because browser-based software used to really suck. It was like kind of kludgy, and you think of clunky CRMs and tools that don't feel user-friendly. Speaking from experience, though, it really is Visual Studio Code, and we still support the local version too. If you really want to keep with what you're doing and run VSC or your own IDE on your laptop, we do have extensions that allow you to just connect remotely and use the same IDE you're comfortable with. So thanks. Cool. We're glad to hear you're using the platform.
Jayesh?
Yeah, Sean, great presentation. I mean, I remember a time when we used to, put aside 1 week for environment and IDE setup when new engineers used to join, or, you would get a new laptop or a new computer, and it's come such a long way. Take your repository, pull it in, and you're up and running. So I think it's great. I really also, I think what Yoko said was very interesting, like just with pull requests and collaborative coding. So I'm certainly going to give it a try. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thanks so much.
Perfect. Well, Sean, thank you so much to you and to GitPod. We really do appreciate you and value your involvement in the Redwood community. So thank you.
Thanks so much. We enjoy working with you.
Awesome. Okay, next up we have Charly from Defer. Charly, welcome.
Hi, Amy. Thank you. So let me share my screen.
Sure.
Yes, share entire screen. Okay, here we go. Can you see my screen? Yes, you can. Okay, so yeah, so we are newcomers, in the Redwood community, new partners. Super happy to be here and to have this opportunity to be part of this panel alongside so many DevTools, great DevTools company. So I'm Charly. I'm the co-founder of Defer. And talking about DevTools, I'm personally pretty amazed, to see the evolutions of DevTools in the last 10 years. How we went from building most of things by ourselves and now having this kind of 2023 builder toolbox that gets you database in one click, easy API deployment everywhere, on very different type of targets. Same with authentication, like we see, development cycle, debugging, etc. And in short, I think we all agree that right now getting a complete application up and running fast with a great developer experience is a commodity. And with my co-founder, Brian, we looked at that and thought about one thing that we all work with, and that is part of all application, and that is not benefiting from this kind of commodity. And this is async tasks. So async tasks, everything running in the background on your application, background jobs, scheduled jobs, crowns, powering simple things such as like algorithm indexing, but to more complex ones like product integration and so on. And we looked at that and realized that right now, there is nothing to help you to have a very smooth experience and also a scalable one without having to do infrastructure work, because you have to set up a Redis, a Mongo, you have to deploy your workers to scale them. And also this leads to like a development cycle that is rusty, because if you want a staging, then you have to reconfigure a new environment, and test it. And most of the time, those kind of async tasks are not easy to test locally. And finally, like working with async tasks today, still today, is working with low-level primitives, which are queues and workers. And you have to wrap your hand around it, enter this mental model, and kind of stop thinking about your application and enter a new thing. So that's the reason why we're building Defer, an async task platform for builders. So you do less plumbing and more building. So what does it mean? Because it's so first we want to help you to get up and running fast. That's async task that fits in the modern development cycle, and to help you operate your application and not like low-level primitive technical resources. So let's dig a bit, in those three specific points. So what does it mean to get up and running fast with Defer? So the first thing is that we are dropping the workers and the queues and introducing background functions. And this, allowing you to actually put existing code or new code, just simple functions, and defer them in the background without any kind of configuration, specific things, works with all workers. The only thing you have to do, and I do a small demo after that, is just to wrap existing function or new function with defer. So when it gets called, it actually runs, in the background on our platform and not on your API, basically offloading your API. All this without any kind of infrastructure work. You don't have to set up anything. It's just like a plug and play solution directly from GitHub. Then we finally bring async task in the modern development cycle. First, by bringing, feature rounds out of the box. And this is, I think, a very interesting thing, because async task can get very complicated, especially if you introduce like breaking chains. It's always better to maybe like test something on the staging, do some performance testing, and then promote it to production. So we bring that by default with continuous deployment from GitHub, logs, notification included for inspection. So basically, we enable you to go from development locally, testing on feature arms, deploying to production, and also debugging in production with one platform, one simple experience. All this while operating your application, and no longer, like technical resources. When you have like this customer that complains about email not being received or export of data not working, you don't have to think, okay, wait, so what is the queue for export of data? What is the queue of that? No, you just look at function in your application. So I will show a real live demo of that right after. And basically, you look at all the functions that are deferred on our platform, and you have a quick view on what is happening without having to think about like a relationship between like queues and your application. All this with like quick actions to actually pause the processing, cancel, rerun execution. And also one thing we are like very proud of, which are like metadatas. So basically you can attach business value from your application, like emails, user ID, workspace ID, super easily to function calls. So you can actually filter them, super quickly, and use Defer not only to do like, debugging or like purely technical stuff, but also like kind of like support level 2 function. So let me now like show you how does this look like, with a Redwood application. So here I have a very, pretty basic Redwood application. Actually, it's the one that is like, scaffold by default with the Redwood script. So I have my API folder, and so the interesting thing is that like if and a differ folder. So let's take an example of sending an email in the background. So here, for example, I'm importing the differ client, here, the differ helper, and I want to send an email with resend. So this is resend allow you to send email using GS6 and to do like rich email super easily. So you can actually, in a background function, a differ one, you can import like native dependencies, you can import like files from your project, and you can also do GS6. So here we are doing like a very kind of simple, but kind of like, kind of thing that you have in every kind of every application, sending an email. We create a function, and the only thing you need to do is to put every background function in one file that has to export default the wrap version of your function with differ. Then you want to trigger, this sending of email. So I'm going to this function, Redwood function, which is a send email. And actually, to trigger something to run in the background, you just import your function, which is in jobs differ, and you call it. And calling it is going to trigger a run on the differ platform. So it's going to offload the process, the execution of this function, the invocation of this function on our platform, scale it automatically. Whenever you have to do it in 1 hour, 3 days, 3 months, or trigger like thousands of them, we're going to auto scale everything for you. And you can stay here in your code and focus on that. So let's take a look at how it looks. So here I'm on differ. I can have many applications. One application is one GitHub repo. As you can see, I have many applications with different like environments. So let's take our Redwood repository. Here, differ has built, our application and actually localized, identified like a lot of different functions. So what is interesting for us is to look at our send email one. I can have a very useful quick look of what is happening on my application without having to think about technical, queuing, async things, etc. I can see like the histogram, the success rate, failure rate, how many are running, queuing, performance, etc. So let's take an example of this Redwood application deployed on Versal, and I want to trigger an execution. So my front end is going to call, the API function. The API function say, okay, it replies super fast because it just called my send email function and immediately, responded to the front end as soon as the execution has been queued. So if I go there and I go to execution, I'm going to see that my send email, call is being queued. It's going to be processed soon. It's going to start, to process, etc. So let's wait a bit. There is like a small latency of like 10 seconds for jobs to be picked up. If we look at the successful execution, the interesting thing is like actually being able, to inspect execution. So here, for example, I'm having a send email execution that is a success. I can see a metadata, which is the email that has been sent to, that I actually put. I have access to logs, arguments, results, and so on. And I can rerun it. All this with like Slack notification, everything for, to have like a modern development cycle. Just to close this up, a last interesting example is how to do crons. So to do a cron, you're going to use the same principle. You're going to create a file in the differ folder, but instead of wrapping it with differ, you're going to wrap it with differ.cron. And when differ is going to actually get the commit, from GitHub and identify this cron function, is going to register it and run it for you. So this email me every hour. I can go here. I can see that, it's flagged as a cron, and I can have the description of, the cron string. And you can see that I paused it because like, even if it's a nice demo, like getting an email every hour was not that funny after like 1 or 2 days. And I can see the different execution of the mail being sent. So we are very happy, to be partner with like Redwood because we share a lot of similar values, which is like empower you, developers, builders, to go faster and not being stuck on very small things and things that are like ubiquitous, like everywhere, like background jobs. So you can get started with the quick start that we have on our documentation. We love to get some feedback, and actually we'll be there at the Redwood conference. So in the end of September in person. So happy to talk there if you guys want to meet. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charly, for presenting. This is fantastic. I love that dashboard where you can see everything that is happening. Bring our panelists back up. Keith, I'd love to hear from you.
Right on, Charly. First of all, there's sharks are swimming or in your head, and it's making me nervous. Anyway,
in your background.
Be careful out there. It's a dangerous world, but you're helping make it smoother. I haven't experienced the sweet spot of your use case, but I have in mind. Again, I'm calling this the summer of AI. I'm geeking out on it, and I think a use case for me will be soon to periodically load documents, split them, and create embeddings for them and load them into a vector database for future use in a document Q&A session. Does that sound like a use case that you'll help me with?
Yeah, definitely. So there is a lot of use cases, and the one that is actually super trendy right now is like everything around like doing OpenAI LLM with Node.js and getting started super fast. And Node.js developers are facing a lot of throttling issues or API rate limiting. And we have this kind of use cases of people doing like, LLM chaining, taking PDF file, reading the content and then chaining a lot of things, etc.
Right.
And also like doing like kind of ETL, which is not really related to AI, but that belongs to the application world. So for example, like in the carbon industry, there is a lot of companies that do like a carbon climate solution. And they have to, ingest a lot of documents, and this is part of the application and not of the data stack per se.
Very good.
So yeah,
got it. Thank you.
Awesome, Jayesh.
Thank you, Charly. I think it was great. I think you're trying to combine the ease of use. Background jobs are not trivial. They're not thought about, but when you actually try to solve that problem, you're like, okay, this is the hard problem to solve. So you're trying to make it easy. And I'm looking through your configuration. You're also trying to make it very configurable and versatile. So good job. Power to you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yoko?
I'm definitely a big fan of this space. So previously, I actually wrote an article on the modern transactional stack where Charly and a few others actually helped to give expert opinions on. But at the end of the day, I think this is super useful when, as a JavaScript or full stack developer, you want to have your doable execution somewhere, like you're traversing between different APIs, different services, and you want somewhere to handle that error, to be able to run it in parallel, to be able to not be limited by the number of connections you can open on your server or something. So I'm a big fan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charly. And for our big ending, what we'll do is we'll bring everybody back up and just see if there's any final thoughts. Jayesh, did you have any final words for our partners?
I think today has been great. I'm gonna go now and start up a new project using GitPod, put authentication in using Auth0, build an awesome UI in Storybook and add Chromatic, make some awesome desk suites, put all of my background processing on Differ, and then debug everything using Replay. I mean, it's perfect.
Awesome.
I mean, there used to be a time where you used to start developing, then go get coffee or lunch while these things happen. Now I don't need to. I just need to get coffee and get on it. There's no time to waste.
Awesome. Yoko.
It is so hard to pick a favorite, but given that I have suffered so much from implementing Auth in my previous job as an engineer, I just really appreciate how much Clerk brings to the market and how much, like as a developer, like Colin was like, oh, you can set this up in 10 minutes. I set it up in 5 minutes. So it's just a joy to use. It's absolutely stunning.
Awesome. Keith?
What I love about the development industry or community, and Redwood as well in particular, is this just the spirit of the deal. Let's surround us fellow developers with people and tools to help us deliver. And it's the spirit of innovation is so strong, and it's very much reflected in the tools and products that have been shared this morning. So thank you all for joining us. I am pumped. I'm ready to go build.
Awesome. And with that in mind, we do have, just as a quick reminder, the conference for builders at the end of September in Grants Pass, and really hope that you will join us in person for that. We also have a town hall next week, and we'll have another partner pitch event at the end of August with 5 more companies. So I hope you'll join us for that as well. And again, just special thanks to all of our panelists and our partners. We could not have done this without you, and our community would not be what it is without your help. So it definitely is all about collaboration and takes a village. So with that, happy Thursday to everyone, and we'll catch you later.